Hi, good evening everyone. Today is the day 39 of Gear Up Mains Answer Writing. In today's class, we will discuss about the question related to the coastal erosion, and it comes under the GS3 specifically, we can say under the disaster management or the environment. We have already covered the 38 classes in which we covered the different topics from GS1 to the GS3. Those who are new here, please you can watch those videos also. It will help you to develop how to write a good answer. What exactly UPSC is demanding from you. When we are starting the answer writing, there is some issue related to that. How to write, what is the main demand, how we can break the question into multiple parts. These are some of the issues the students are facing. If you are watching this video, you will get a fair idea how we can break a question into the multiple parts, how we can address the each question with the specific demand asked by the UPSC. What is the meaning of the words evaluate, analyze, critical analyze, examine, discuss, elaborate, elucidate, comment? All these type of the keywords are also discussed in this series. So I suggest you please watch this series and also try to write all the questions that discuss here. You can submit those questions to the Edukemy website under the master program. That is completely free of cost to all of you, and those answers will be evaluated by our experts. Okay, so let's start the question for today. The question is, coastal sand mining, whether legal or illegal, poses one of the biggest threat to the environment. Analyze the impact of sand mining along the Indian coast, citing specific examples. The question is also demanding the specific examples with impact of the sand mining as well as the threat of it. As usual, we are dividing the question into three parts. The first part will be the introduction. Second part will be the body part. And the third part will be the conclusion. But what is the main task here? The main task is how we will divide the body part into the multiple subparts. The question is asking, coastal sand mining, whether legal or illegal, poses one of the biggest threats to our environment. So the first heading will be the threats of coastal mining. Threats of coastal sand mining. This will be the first subheading under the body part. In the second part, the question is asking, analyze the impact of sand mining along the Indian coast. Now, the question is specific towards the Indian coast. So, the second subheading will be the impact of sand mining along the Indian coast. Along the Indian coast. This is the two main demand of the question. So we need to be address all the first demand, threat of the coastal sand mining. Second demand, the impact of the sand mining along the Indian coast. Okay, this is clear to everyone? Okay. Now let's start with the introduction part. How we will start the introduction? We can directly start with what is the coastal sand mining. What is the coastal sand mining? Taken out of the sand from the coast, either from the ocean, either from the river bed, either from the sea, we are taking out the sand that released, that make some of the negative impacts on the environment, on the marine ecosystem, and on the nearby livelihood also. This is known as the coastal sand mining. So you can directly start with it. You can directly start with the coastal sand mining. And you can also quote here about the UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, which said that due to the increase in the population, there is an increase in the requirement of the sand for the houses, for the infrastructure development. So you can write this in the introduction itself. So this will be the introduction. You can define the coastal sand mining, and you can also adding recognized organization, the UNEP, which are giving the specific data related to it. Now come to the body part, where the requirement in the body part is the two. One is the, as we discuss here, one is the threat of the coastal sand mining, and the second is the impact. One is the threat of the coastal sand mining, threat, and the second is the impact. Threat of the coastal sand mining, and the second is the impact. Now let's come to the first one, the threat of the coastal sand mining. Anybody can tell me what can be the major threats of the coastal sand mining? Here, anybody can tell what can be the major threats? We can divide this into like a 3-4 points. And here the question is also asking us about, we need to give the suitable examples related to it. We need to give the suitable examples related to it. Now in the threat parts, we will provide the suitable examples related to it. So first we can write about here the coastal mining. So we need to give the specific about the coastal mining, coastal sand mining specifically impacting it. So it is specifically impacting the marine ecosystem. Coastal mining is impacting marine ecosystem. How it is impacting the marine ecosystem? When we are doing the mining in the restricted area, then they are specifically impacting the organism living there. The coastal mining is impacting the marine ecosystem directly. So here we can give the example of ghadial. Here we can give the example of ghadial, which is a critically endangered species which is directly impacted by the coastal mining. We can give the example of ghadial here, which was directly impacted by the coastal mining. So these kind of examples here required. Without example, the question is not complete. Without example, the question is not complete. So you need to give the examples in the each subheading here. The second heading we can write, it's impact the coastal ecosystem. It's impact the coastal ecosystem. When there is mining from the coastal area, it's impacting the coastal life, it's impacting the coastal ecosystem as well. There may be the disturbance in the fishes, there is a disturbance in the habitat of fish, habitat of the ocean, sea organism. So that's directly impacted under the coastal ecosystem. And in that coastal ecosystem, there is a specific example, there is a Alapad region. There is a Alapad region in the Kerala. Alapad region in the Kerala, which specifically affected by coastal mining, and here data more than 6,000 family. More than 6,000 family affected by coastal mining. More than 6,000 family affected by coastal mining. The next we need to be right here, the stream degradation. The third point is here, stream degradation. Due to the mining in the riverbed, it increased the depth. It increased the depth of the river. formation of the pit in the river, which lead to the stream degradation of the banks of the stream, which leads to the further in the flood situation as well. Here you can give the examples of the Krishna and Godavari flood basin. You can give the example of Krishna and Godavari, flood basin. So it's lead to the stream degradation, Krishna and Godavari flood basin. So here we discuss about the marine ecosystem, which directly impacting. You can give the example of Ghadial. In the case of the coastal ecosystem, you can give a specific example of the Kerala of the Allapad region, where specifically 6,000 family was impacted due to the coastal sand mining. In the case of the stream degradation due to the sand mining through the river beds, it will lead to the damage of the banks of the river, which may be further lead to the flood situation in the area. And in some of the cases, there is an impact on depth of the river, which is impacting the course of the river also. So in this case, you can give the example of the Krishna and the Godavari basin. You can give the example of the Krishna and the Godavari basin. And in the further points, we can write about biodiversity loss. We can write about the fifth point. We can write here is the biodiversity loss. In the case of the biodiversity loss, when there is sand mining, that leads to the turbidity. The sand mining leads to the turbidity. It leads to the turbidity in the water, which can impact the coral and which can also impact the fishes in that area, which impact the coral and which also impacting the fishes in those areas. So it's also leads to the biodiversity losses. It also leads to the biodiversity losses. If we see the here examples, we discuss about the coastal mining lead to marine ecosystem damage, then the coastal ecosystem damage, then it's lead to the stream degradation, and finally is the major impact, the biodiversity loss. The coastal mining leads to the increase in the turbidity of the water, and that turbidity of the water is impacting the corals and impacting the other lives in the water. Okay, and in the next point we can also write about the affect the water availability. It's also affect the water availability. Water availability in nearby area. Water availability in the nearby area. And here how it's impacting the water availability in the nearby area, like when there is sand mining going on, there is a creation of the pit in the river bed. So that pit can be do the multiple times. It leads to the less recharge of the groundwater. It leads to the less recharge of groundwaters, and which may further lead to the dry well into the specific area, which leads to the further dry well into the specific area. You can give the example of some of the region in the Maharashtra. You can give the example of some of the region in the Maharashtra. So this was the first part of the question, which is asking us about the threats. The first is the coastal mining related to the marine ecosystem, and we can give the example of the Ghadial here, the critically endangered species. Then about the coastal ecosystem in the Allapad, the Kerala, the 6,000 family lose their income due to the sand mining in that area. Stream depletion, the Krishna and Godavari basin specifically we mentioned. Biodiversity loss due to the turbidity increase in the water, it leads to the biodiversity losses. Availability of the water in that area, it's also impact the availability of the water in some specific area where the mining is going on. So these are some of the threats of the coastal mining which we need to address as per the demand of the question. I thought this is easily understandable by everyone. Now let's come to the second part, the impact of sand mining along the Indian coast. This is the second part of the question, which is saying the impact of sand mining along the Indian coast. The question is specific, asking about the increase of the sand mining along the Indian coast. So we can write about it leads to the increase in the digesters. Increase in digesters. Everybody remember the Kerala floods? Everybody remember the Kerala floods? You can give the example of Kerala floods here. What happened in the Kerala floods? Due to the excess mining of some of the areas, some of the river beds in the states, which leads to the breakdown of the barriers which prevent the floods, like the river barriers, river banks, it's damaged completely, which leads to the flood situation in the Kerala and the huge kind of the floods in the Kerala, which increase the digester there. Then we can give the second example, it's increase the turbidity in the water. It's increase the turbidity in water. The second impact of the sand mining, it increase the turbidity in the water, and that increase in the turbidity in the water lead to the coral damage. Lead to the coral damage. If you know, the corals can live in the fresh water as well as the other type of the water. But if there is turbidity in the fresh water, that may lead to the coral damage. In this case, you can give the examples of the Tuticorin. You can give the examples of the Tuticorin in Kerala, where this damage occur due to the turbidity of the water, which specifically impacting the coral reefs there, which specifically impacting the coral reef there. Then you can come to the habitat destruction. Habitat destruction. Anybody can give the example of habitat destruction? In those areas where the sand mining or coastal mining is the prevalent, that specifically impacting the habitat of the species. Everybody remember the olive ridley turtle. Olive ridley turtle in Odisha beach. Their nesting is impacted by, their nesting is specifically impacted by due to the habitat destruction by the sand mining. Habitat destruction by the sand mining. Their habitat destruction by sand mining is impacted. So you can give the examples of the olive ridley turtle. Okay, clear? You can also give the example here for the biodiversity loss. Biodiversity loss. In the case of the mining, it's specifically impacting the mangrove ecosystem. It's specifically impacting the mangrove ecosystem. If the coastal sand mining is impacting the mangrove ecosystem, that specifically impact the environment also impact some of the other issues related to that. Also impacting the fish, also impacting the other organism. So this is one of the reasons of the biodiversity loss in that area. Next, you can mention about the loss in the infrastructure. Loss in infrastructure nearby the area, nearby the beach area, nearby the mining area, which lead to the loss in the infrastructure, because lead to the break of the infrastructure in the nearby area. Maybe because of the river banks, which are protected specifically, which are made for protection of the floods. In the case of the coastal mining, it's impacting the coastal area infrastructure. It's also impacting the pollution, we can say. It also impacting pollution, like due to the high mining, highly sand mining in the area leads to the high traffic in that area, and which leads to the pollution also. So what examples you can give here in the impacts? You can give the impacts of sand mining on the increase in the disaster. You can give the specific examples of the Kerala floods. It's increased the turbidity in the water, which leads to the impact of the coral reefs, coral damage. You can give the example here, the Tuticorin, in the Tuticorin specifically beach in the Kerala, which impacted by the turbidity of the water. Next, you can give the example of related to the habitat destruction due to the coastal mining, which is the olive ridley turtle, which is directly impacted by due to the mining near to the Odisha beach, Guharmatha beach. It's also lead to the biodiversity loss in the mangroves area, the Gulf of Mannar. You can give the example here. You can give the example of Gulf of Mannar, which is directly impacted due to the coastal mining, the mangrove ecosystem. Then you can give the loss of infrastructure in the coastal area. It's also increased the pollution. So these are some of the impact of the legal or the illegal sand mining in the India, and these impacts are specifically in the case of India. So now what we can suggest related to it? What we can suggest, we need to be write the way forward here. We can write the 2-3 points in the way forward. Number one, the strong regulation. Regulation related to the mining of the sand through the beaches, in the coastal area or the riverbed. Government policy like the M-sand. Government started the policy related to the M-sands, like these are the sands which are formed from the mountains, which are formed from the some of the stones, the M-sand, which can be directly used as a replacement of the sand. The other impurities from the coal generation, like the 20% of the extra product when we are doing the coal mining found near the coal, so that can also be used as a replacement of the sand. So you can suggest these kind of regulation, government initiatives, what other substitute can be used for the sand, so we can stop the sand mining, or the intensity can be low. So they are like we are now using the sand from the coastal area, from the river in the highest amount because of the population explosion. Now we are a country of 1.5 billion population. The requirement of the sand will increase, so we need to look at these alternatives. We need to look at these alternatives. And finally, we need to come to the conclusion part, what we will write in the conclusion here. What we will write in the conclusion. You can write here, due to increase in the coastal mining, due to increase in the population, there is an increase in demand of the sand. And as per the report of the Ministry of Environment, there is an increase in the last 25 to 30 years. There is increase in the 2/3 times. There is increase in the sand minings. According to the report of the ministry, there is increase in the multiple times of sand mining in the last 20-25 years. And according to a report, there is almost the 1/3 coastal area of India is affected by the sand mining. So you can write this in the conclusion. So we discuss about the introduction, what we will write in the introduction. Then we discuss about the threats of the sand mining, and finally we discuss about the impact of the sand mining in the specific case of the India. Then we write about the 3-4 points in the way forward, and finally conclude the answer Then finally we conclude the answer related to the some of the data you mentioned about here. According to the Union Ministry, yes, Union Ministry of the Earth Science, there is more than 1/3 of the coastal area of India is affected by the sand mining. So you can write this in your answer. Okay, clear to everyone? So we will meet tomorrow again with the new question related to GS3. Till then, please try to write the answer and submit your answer to the Edukemy portal. So it can be evaluated, and you can also evaluate yourself before the UPSC evaluate you. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.